All right, 3:31. Let's get started. You guys having a good day? That's high praise, thank you. We do a lot to try and make SAINTCON fun and interesting. One of the things that we know geeks like to play around with are lots of tools and gadgets and gizmos and things like that. And so I decided early on that we wanted to talk maybe, we did the AirTags last year. This year I decided, hey, I need to do this FlipperZero thing because the best thing that I feel like I can teach or talk about are the things that I'm currently messing with because it's the things that are fresh in my brain and can download and mess with. Well, that was 6 months ago. And then SAINTCON starts planning and things. And so this is a presentation that I built 5-6 months ago that I'm hoping that I can remember all the way through. Anyway, so all I'm asking is that you bear with me. I'm going to give just a real quick, brief intro to myself. For those of you that are first-timers here, I'm Troy Jessup. I go by Jupiter in Discord, and I'm very approachable. I've got many badges to hand out if you want to stop by and say hello. I'd appreciate it for today that you don't stop me in the hallways all the time. I'll be totally available tomorrow because this becomes the last talk of the day today for me. And then tomorrow I don't have a single thing to do other than hand out mini badges, so happy to do that. The founder, I think is what we call me, stole the idea of this conference fair and square from many of the other conferences that do cybersecurity around the world. And so you're going to find a lot of similar things, but there's a lot of things that are very unique to SAINTCON as well. So that's just a little primer. We want to talk today about flippers, and we're going to talk about flippers today. So, FlipperZeros. How many of you have one? Okay, this is going to be really interesting a little bit later. Because there will be an open demo portion of this. In fact, we will tempt the demo gods, I think, twice during this presentation here. But for those of you that have a flipper device, what is, and I don't need everybody all shouting, but if you want to raise your hand, I'll call on one or two of you, but what is your favorite thing to do with the device? Anybody want to just go out? Go ahead.
Infrared responses for a fan in my parents' rooms that think that it's haunted.
Okay, infrared, turning the things on and off in your parents' house, go ahead.
I got it 2 days ago, so
Turning on the TV, that's quite the accomplishment. One more right here.
I got my church's keys in here.
Okay, we're going to talk about church keys. All right, so this presentation, I've built it to give an introduction and cover some of the things. Many of you are probably brand new to the flippers. I was when I built this presentation, and so as I was exploring documentation and reading books and reading Reddit posts and things, I went down that rabbit hole and I found out a lot of cool things. And so I'm going to share this very much from Troy's or Jupiter's perspective. This is the flipper. It was designed by, let me get my glasses out, because we want to give proper credit, Alex Kuligan and Pavel Zuhauner. If somebody has a better way to pronounce those, and if I just butchered those, my apologies to the designers. It's one of the coolest, funnest tools I've ever had to hold in my hands, and we thank you for it. But what is this thing? This thing is full of all sorts of gadgets. Okay, we've often, in the past, we go out and we buy purpose-built gadgets for this thing or that thing and such. Somebody finally said, hey, let's smash it all together and put it in this really tiny form factor. And so we're going to kind of talk just a little bit about what's inside this. But this is literally what it looks like on the inside. It's got some battery power, and it's got radios for transmitting, radios for receiving, and all sorts of other little things. Let's get into it. We're going to talk about it. This might sound technical. We're just going to breeze through it. But it has an ARM Cortex processor in it, and it's not a bad one for a device this small. It's got plenty of flash to run most of the small applications and things that it's doing inside of there. But one of the things that we've had, at least when I wrote the presentation slides, it was super hard to get one of these, because you'd always go to the Flipper store and it would show sold out, and then you go onto Amazon and they want $500 for one of these things. Well, stocking has become a lot better. They've gotten a lot better, so you don't necessarily need this slide as much anymore, but I did want to leave it here and say if you're having struggles because they're sold out, if you go to twitter.com/flipperlocator, it'll let you know where the legitimate sources are to buy these things. But we have a badge game this year, okay? How many of you started playing the badge game? A little bit, okay. You're going to want to keep playing that, especially if you don't have a flipper already, because there's 20 to 30 flippers that we're giving away as part of badge game prizes this year. So you can go get one by buying it. They generally cost about $170, and so it's approachable for most geeks. And if it's somehow prohibitively expensive, work really hard on the badge game, and we'll make sure you leave with one. Okay, a couple of other things just high level. SD cards are required for a flipper to be fully functional. You can boot it without one, but you want the SD cards in there. What we found in our testing and playing around, that 64 gig is the max that it'll support, but the sweet spot is a 16 gig SD card. And you can store all of the things, but not have to do a lot of data access along broad file system allocation tables and things. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about firmware, and then we'll talk about it again later. The official firmware for the FlipperZero is out there and available, and it's super easy to find, to install, and to manage. You use a QFlipper app. We'll show you a demo on some of those later. But it enables all of the core functionality of this device, but it has, out of appropriateness, lots of restrictions that prevent you from reading credit cards and some of these things that might put it into this hacker tool, miscreant tool, that's the term we use here, realm. And so what we want to tell you is that there's other firmware that unlocks all of this stuff. And it's available, and it's freely available. Most of them are well supported. These are the ones that I've played around with. The one that I currently like the most, and take that recommendation as exactly what it's worth, not much. The Unleashed firmware is the one that I think is most approachable for me. It unlocks all of these little security protections and things, keeps you still in the freeway lanes, but you've got all of the lanes to play with, kind of thing, and such. Downloading, building, and installing the firmware couldn't be simpler. We're not going to necessarily even demo that. I think that's, if you are approaching flippers for the first time, you're going to figure that out pretty quickly. But firmware and app development. One of the really interesting things that has happened since the release of this device is it's gone from this knick-knack kind of thing that's been talked about, made really hard to order for a long time, and now all of these little app developers and people are starting to do things with all of the radios and the capabilities of these devices. And so it's exploding. Think of it like the App Store kind of thing. Originally, when the iPhone came out, how there's 50 apps, and then in a month there were 20,000 or something. That's kind of the approach that we're starting to see with this, and we'll show you how to install some of those things and stuff. But a lot of this is very simplistic, push-button control kinds of things for very complex processes and things that are happening in the background. Radio controls, frequency analysis, managing frequency blocks, and all these other things that you have to program into software and know how to code or know how to script and do things really complicated and have to understand it at that really deep level. It's all push-button inside of a FlipperZero. What I wanted to do is at least remind myself to discuss firmware building tools. Flipper is one of the first firmware applications that I have personally found that makes it really easy to download the source code, develop an app inside of that, and just upload it to your Flipper. It makes it super simple for you to compile and build firmware because it's all built with the end user in mind. But again, these are all the boring things. Let's get into A couple of other housekeeping things for flippers. If you're not familiar with the QFlipper app, we're going to actually be using that today. But it is the application you can install on almost any platform, Linux, Mac, Windows, etc., that allows you to connect to the flipper and configure it. We'll show you how to do some of that stuff. It's available in all of the things, all of the stores. But the application has some cool features in it, meaning that you don't have to hook it up to a USB-C cable like the one up here. You can just control your flipper via Bluetooth because you put it up in the ceiling tiles of the place where you're pen testing or doing things and such. It does over-the-air firmware updates. It does all sorts of cool cracking for MyFair keys, which we're going to play around with. We'll try and do a live demo of that here in a minute. And many development and applications are coming out all of the time. So a couple of things that I've found were really kind of fun and interesting is that you can also use online services like the Flipper Lab using Chrome, because it actually has to create a serial connection to your flipper, but you can actually go to a website, not have to install any software, and control and manage your flipper. So let's tempt fate for the first time here, and we're going to play with this in kind of a live demo for a minute. Now, for me, it's a little bit tougher because I only have this little screen up here to look at, so give me a second while I figure out how to... I'm going to close that out because it's holding that serial connection open, I'm sure. Which one is it? Okay, yeah, sorry. That's very tiny for me up here. Okay, so we're going to connect to this flipper up here, and we're going to kind of take you on a little bit of a tour of this device. Those of you that have flippers and have either the lab functionality or you can do this in the QFlipper app, I want you to go to your CLI on this thing, and we're going to try this. We're just going to see what happens here. I'm going to type chat into there. Oh, come on. These are why we call them demo gods. I just barely flashed this, and I probably blew it up and made it not work. There's a really cool chat app, by the way, that I don't remember if I had to reinstall or whether it came native in the firmware, that if I type chat into the command line, it opens up frequency in the 400 megahertz range, and all of the rest of you can join in, and we can have our own private chat channels. Anybody else is working? Yeah. Okay, great. Then it's not just me. I was about to show you that, but I knew that something like this would happen. So I've got slides for this. Okay, so you can go into the command line on your FlipperZero through the web interface or otherwise, and you can type in something cool like chat, and then the device becomes enabled. It opens up frequency. Let me see what that is. Something in the 433 megahertz range, and allows for input-output, and it just handles chats from one device to another. So I encourage you to figure out how to get the chat function working and play around with that. There might be some clues to Hackers Challenge games or other things associated with those flying around and things. So, okay, first demo failed. The next demo will probably go better. All right, so let's keep going through. We talked about some of the software, websites, and things you can use to control this thing. One of the best features or capabilities of the Flipper is it is super well documented. All of the information that you would want to go down in the way of rabbit holes of how to do and manage the NFC functionality, the RFID functionality, infrared functionality, and things are all super well documented here. And so I'm just going to take you on a whirlwind tour through some of these. We're going to talk about NFC capability. Everybody understands what NFC is, near field communication kinds of things. You probably have in your cybersecurity world or your IT world an NFC device that you interact with, whether it's a door reader, maybe it's RFID, maybe it's NFC or whatever. This device has some native capability built into it to interact with these things. It has read, write, and emulate functionality, and it works in the 13.56 megahertz only band, and it supports a lot of different NFC types, including some of the MyFair Classics, the 1K, the 4K Ultralight, and I can read the rest for you, but you can see it on the slide here better than I can. And most of the NFC Forum standard protocols are supported by the Flipper, so you can read, write, and emulate these types of things. But as security is increased in its capability of creating keys or challenge responses and other things in RFID systems, you have to go a little bit further. And we're going to do a demo on how to do some of that stuff here in a little bit. Did you? Yeah, what firmware are you on?
I'm on Unleashed, but the command is sub-GHC.
Oh, they probably changed it since... Okay, we might play around with that at the end if we have some time. No, that's okay. I appreciate that. He says he got the chat working over here on Unleashed firmware. So the read capability built into this, it can actually read and several of these different types of keys. We call them, who has the best way of pronouncing this? Nonces? That's what I call it. What's that? Nonces? Is that just something? Yeah. So, or are you saying nonces? Like, what on earth are you talking about? Nuances. Okay, somebody knows how to pronounce this better than me. I'm new to this, all right? But you have the capability in this system to pair it with your phone and actually do key cracking for your NFC systems from the Flipper. So this is kind of demonstrating in a really cute way the way that you can use your car or your Flipper to read the actual door latch or the NFC system, pull keys off of there, and then take those keys back, crack them on your phone, your laptop, or wherever, and then store them back into the Flipper so that then you can just read cards and replay cards against that entire system. Kind of cool, right? Well, let's show it. I have with me an RFID. This is the Sargent Asa Alloy. They're selling the lock, not necessarily the RFID system here. But I'm going to see if I can fit all this up here. You don't need to see the pretty as much as you can see that I'm going to be doing this with my Flipper. And I'm going to start my QFlipper app back up in just a second. Let me kill this. And we're going to try and demo. And I don't know how well this is going to work because that's as big as I think that you get to make the page. Let me see if I can make it bigger, sorry. I think it's kind of set. So I'm sorry that's so small, but here we go. I'm going to come into my Flipper here, and I'm going to go into NFC, and there's a function in here called Detect Reader. And I'm going to, and it's going to emulate a key that it knows, and it's going to, oh, there it goes. There's 2 of the 10 keys. And it wants me to just kind of move that back and forth. This worked great in testing. There's 4 of 10. You just kind of have to finagle this sometimes. And if you're doing this in your hotel, it gets a little bit weird and creepy. All right, well, this is why we test our demos ahead of time, right? Oh, we're up to 6. Here we go. We're going to keep doing it. All the time, this thing is blinking feverishly up here. But we're essentially reading the keys, the challenge keys for this NFC system. We got 8 of 10 here. Touch it to the reader again. All right, 10 of 10, right? Whew. Nice job. Okay, so we've got a bunch of keys. 5 different pairs are saved. Oh, because I blew away all the other ones here. Okay, so we have now taken this poor lock and had our way with it. That's all you get to see of the lock for now. And we're going to, can I have my phone? Yeah, sorry. The other part of this is easier to do with the phone. Pairing request. Okay, we're going to pair with 1-8. I better do this fast or somebody's going to pair. Pair before me or whatever. And I don't know if there's not a way for me to stream this, but let me explain what I'm doing here. Inside of the Q Flipper app here on my phone, I have the ability to use what they call MFKey32. It's a program that will actually, well, it's saying it's not connected now. Dang it. Pairing failed? Did somebody else pair before I got there? Let me try this again. I hate it when I try and do live demos. Don't y'all? Yeah. These never work. This is why I went to the default firmware, so I wouldn't run into these problems, and tested it all. Okay, I'm sorry. You're not going to be able to see me do MFKey32 cracking. Has anybody had an opportunity to do that yet?
What is that?
Okay. Okay, MFKey, here's what I know about it. Is Iceman in the room? Iceman, do you want to help a brother out? Like, what is MFKey32 cracking? But maybe before I invite him to come up and school us all, do you mind coming up on stage? Do you have a stick mic? There might be one up here. Does this one work? All right, let me do an introduction real quick. He had no idea I was doing this.
Holy fuck.
This is failing miserably for me. So Iceman is the foremost, we'll just call it that, right? Foremost RFID expert in the world. He's the guy that designed such things as the Proxmark. Anybody use one of those before or know what those are? Okay. This is that guy. He's flown all the way from Europe to be here at our conference to just dabble in RFID things with us. So we're grateful to have you here. Can you explain what MFKey32 is?
I can.
Okay.
And hello, everybody. I'm Iceman. Wow, there's some strong lights up here.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, go ahead.
Wow, it's no screen either.
It's over there, and you can kind of see it there.
I know why you can't do demos. It's because official firmware for Flipper updated to 2.0 a month ago, and we changed everything. That's why it's not working for you. Your slides are 6 months old. That's the first thing. So what? It's not that it's not working. I know you did it before because it works. And I can guarantee it all works. MFKey32 is a way of MyFair Classic. I don't know if you know MyFair Classic protocol, but it does a three-way handshake. And if you fail in the key recovery or you have a wrong key when you do authentication phase, you can collect the nonces and the encrypted responses from the reader and the card. And if you do two half ones, that's why you recover 32 bits from one of it. So you need 2 authentication attempts to get it. That's why it's called MF332. And when it does that, it kind of fast recovers the key in the crypto one algorithm. So it's a simple one. If you have a full authentication and you want to recover it, it's called MFKey64.
Oh, go ahead.
I should stop talking.
Don't look at me. I'm just reacting to the fact. This is why I invited him up here.
It's kind of cool, though. Yeah. So, Flipper. What do you want to talk more about?
Well, listen. You contribute to the code. You.
Oh no, I never touched Flipper.
Okay.
Yes, but there's a rumor about a firmware, but it's a closed beta.
Okay.
And I see El Cantoro is in the room, so you know it's birthday, you know. Oh man. Anyway, so
what can we do with the MFKey32? We can then crack the keys.
Yes. Okay.
And so then what do we do with those?
So you would crack a key for one sector. So when it comes to MyFair Classic, it comes to different memory layouts. You have 1K or 4Ks, or meaning that has 320 bytes. What you can do then, when you recover 1 or 2 free keys, you will be able to read that memory out of it. You would also use another command called nested and recover the rest of the keys on that card, and then you would dump the whole card memory. And then with the Flipper, you would load in that dump memory into it and simulate it, and then you would present it to the reader, and the reader go like, oh, that's nice. And you can, so that's what you would do with it.
Okay. Technical deep dive approach. He'll be at the RFID community part of the week and speaking on some of this later in this week and stuff.
Oh, yeah, on Thursday.
On Thursday. So I appreciate him explaining this way better than I could, because I don't know what it does. I know that I can read the nonces. I can then download those keys onto my phone. I can crack them. And then once I feed those back into my flipper, I can then read all of the cards for that system, and then it allows me to emulate or replay them.
Yes. And you will see other key recovery vectors for if you live at a Hyatt, in a hotel next.
Yes.
If you live there, you will see that those keys, you can't always crack the cards. And then this would be a way to recover at least one key from it and use that to recover the rest of the keys on that card. Not saying that you should do that.
Or that anybody has played with that system.
Has anybody done that so far?
I've been playing with the Hyatt system over there because that's where I'm staying.
Yes.
So, of course, you take it with you and you start playing with it. Yes. Thank you. Sorry. Appreciate you. I knew it was a question I couldn't answer, so I hope they did a good job there. I'm going to keep rushing through this, just to kind of cover some of the things that I've played with. Again, taking you from beginner to intermediate, and I'm going to just drop you off at intermediate and you can figure it out. One of the other cool things that we found out is that you can play with amiibos. How many of you guys need all of the amiibos? Okay, those of you that are gamers, my son's big into this, and when I showed him this, he's like, Dad, I need one of these. I need to be able to go over to my friend's house and just put on whatever amiibo that we want to enable whatever we're doing in our games. I'm not much of a Nintendo guy, but this is a thing, evidently. So if you want to go out and download every amiibo that exists, that's the URL to do that. So we played with that. Let me talk about GPIO. One of the funnest things as an electronics design kind of person like me, and I just barely dabble in it. I've done a few mini badges, and that's all I really know. Resistors, LEDs. I've played with some microcontrollers and such, but the GPIO pins really change the dynamic of what this device is capable of. You can actually build anything you want and to connect it to that run ducky scripts natively from that device. In fact, that's where the Bluetooth to your phone and control over it becomes really fun and interesting, because you can leave that hiding behind the computer, be 30 feet away, and still run your ducky scripts against that device, wait for it to be unlocked or whatever the thing may be. And I suck at ducky scripts, and there's some really cool ones out there that you can download, but I'll tell you what, the advent of ChatGPT has made ducky scripts way funner. And so those of you that have a ChatGPT 3 or greater subscription or access, I highly recommend that you type something like, hey, write a ducky script that will open a terminal in a Mac, inject into cron tab once per hour the command that says, say another hour of this and I'm going to go completely nuts. And it's going to spit that out. It's a little bit of copy and paste, and then you just run it as a ducky script on your FlipperZero. Fun? Okay, you can troll people with that. Use that with responsibility. This is my recommendation. Okay, let's keep going. A couple of other capabilities inside this device you should be aware of. One that might be helpful to you while you're at SAINTCON this year is infrared. Okay, at the beginning of the presentation, when I said, hey, who's had a fun experience with this, somebody mentioned turning on their TV. Well, it goes way beyond the ability to turn on a TV. Okay, it does have a full infrared transceiver capability, means it can send and receive infrared. It does it in the 800 to 900 nanometer range, so it's kind of limited. Well, it's broad, actually. So it'll work with almost anything that is programmed to use infrared. But those of you that still use the old school remotes at home that have to be pointed at the TV still, we all know, you probably have that one device still, right, that does that. This will work with that. And so it has built into it something called TV Be Gone. Have you guys heard of that before? Okay, that's one of the coolest apps to go into a sports bar on a Saturday evening, Sunday morning or something, and just set the flipper on the table and press the TV Be Gone button and watch the projectors and the TVs all just go bloop. So it's a really cool application that does nothing more than turns off the TVs around you. Cool innovation. In fact, CompuKid Mike, I don't know if he's in the room, but we'll give him a shout out. Several years ago, built a sonic screwdriver badge that he traded at DEF CON that had TV Be Gone built into it. And so I still have that badge, and that's what I use when I want to do TV Be Gone, but it's built into the flipper. Every single infrared remote setup that you can imagine, whether it's a Panasonic or a Sony or whatever, you can go out and download all of the, what do we call them? Patterns of infrared sending and receiving, and just play those on your, so if you know what kind of TV you've got, you can just turn it into your remote control if you wanted to. It actually can do direct cloning, so you just point the remote like we used to in the olden days to clone remotes and things. But the reason why I'm bringing this up and going through this whole list is, or you can level up your SAINTCON badge. Hint, okay? So one of the things that you'll probably notice is the very top of your badge is this really dark colored LED. Do you see it there? It's an infrared transceiver. And so you can send and receive infrared with this thing. Now, it's used for a couple of different functions, but one of the things that we've tried to build into it, it should work. I don't know if they finished all the code to make it work. I hope they did, because I'm going to tell you that if you can figure out what IR is blasting around you, you might be able to replay that while you sleep and level up your badge. Okay, because we designed it to be when you're in the ballrooms or you're participating in talks, that you're being IR blasted and your badges are leveling up for you while you're sitting here. That might not be fully turned on, I don't know. But you might want to see if you see IR signals bouncing around and what's out there, and maybe replay those overnight. Okay, let's talk about RFID. It's a little different than NFC because it works in a different frequency spectrum. This is low frequency, it's 125 kilohertz, and it supports AM modulation, which is amplitude modulation, PSK, or no, it's AM is not amplitude modulation in that, right? What's that? ASK. So I've got that wrong in there. ASK, PSK, and FSK are the modulations, and it supports all of those fun little things there. I don't know what half of those are, but I do know a couple of things about RFID. So you're going to get the basic to intermediate version of this. And then Iceman, if you want to chime in on any of this, you're welcome to, or encouraged. Around here, for those of you that are foreign, there are a lot of churches in Utah. They're LDS churches, okay? Formerly known as Mormon churches, but we don't go by that as much anymore. But church keys all look like this. And so there is a way for you to get your unlimited church gym subscription by using the RFID capability inside of this device. And the cool thing about the church keys is that there's not a lot of security in these, meaning that what you can do is literally just take it and read it. There's no cracking keys or anything else. And so I don't know if this, I'm not going to demo this too much, but I'm going to show you on here. If I go back to, and it's probably too tiny for anybody to see, but if I go into RFID and I go to my saved things, I've got a secret thing here. I've got the shop, which is the Utah Saint organization shop where we store all the junk for SAINTCON. And then I've got the church key in here that I can play and get into my free gym subscription, as you all know what that means. So, church keys use the RFID system. So those of you that have those, there's probably many of you that work for the church, sorry, not sorry, in advance here, that now are going to be like, we've got to upgrade that. But church keys, so hold on, slides back. Just don't touch the routers. Let's see, safe, okay. Or here's the other thing that I'm opening or allowing you to do. What I delivered to the RFID community on Monday was a gigantic stack of RFID tags that are read, write, rewrite capable for you to experiment, whether it's with the Flipper or otherwise. So you can clone them, you can replay them against some of the things. I'm just encouraging you to spend a little bit of time, especially if you've got a Flipper. But if you don't, they have them at the RFID community. Go learn what this device is about and how to interact with the RFID systems that are out there. I think that by far, that's what makes this device the most interesting, is its capability of doing so many things, but RFID and NFC are the things that I went down the geek rabbit hole on. Let me brush over just a few other ones real quick. Applications galore for this thing, okay? It's got UART emulators. It's got ESP32 Wi-Fi Marauder, which we talked about, DAuth capabilities. It is a full-featured Wi-Fi hacking capability built into this form factor. Century Safe Unlock, which we talked about. GPS decoders. You need to have hardware, a GPS receiver for it to work. Weather sensor decodes that you can do just over the air. I2C things as well. There is a SAINTCON mini badge tester program or application to run with that badge tester that we talked about. Couple of other things that are really cool here. The NRF24 mouse jacker or the NF24 sniffer. Pope many years ago did a presentation on listening for keystrokes, mouse movements, and things like that. This has the capability of recording those, playing those back, and doing those kinds of things. Signal generators, Wi-Fi scanners, etc. Apps for media, which we're not going to spend a lot of time on. Apps for or different types of tools. NFC Magic, iClass PicoPass, RFID fuzzers. Let me just tell you what an RFID fuzzer is. Correct me if I get off the rails here a little bit. But we started playing with it thinking, okay, well, if you read an RFID code and it starts with all zeros and ends in the number 1, and that's what the key was, what happens if you just change it to 2? And run it on the same system, or change it to 3. And you can actually go through and replay at speed all of these different keys based off of what you've read off of a key that you've captured, snuck out of somebody's pocket by sticking your FlipperZero right next to their back pocket or whatever. Those kinds of things. You can replay those, right? Have you ever messed with that? Yep. Of course. I implore you to go talk to Iceman about RFID fuzzing. Okay, barcode generators, we don't care about any of this stuff mostly. Oh, it can be your Google Authenticator, or it's similar to Google Authenticator. It has an Authenticator app in there. I wouldn't recommend using that for important things, but the POCSAG pager message decoder. Remember back, as many of you probably remember in SAINTCON when we did that for the first time using software-defined radio stuff, and we've started seeing all this healthcare data going across the air, like, hey, there's this patient in room number 23 that needs their meds right now, and all these other things that go on these old pager systems. That capability is built right into this device as well. It also supports iButton, which we don't have a lot of it in, at least in Utah, and I think this is more of a European thing, right? Russian thing. But the little thing on the end is an iButton kind of support thing. They've got their own protocols, capabilities, and things. These systems look kind of like this. I have seen these in the United States here and there, but they're few and far between. So I won't go down that rabbit hole too much. But let's talk a little bit about sub-gigahertz radio frequency capabilities. This has the TICC 1101 chip in it that supports all sorts of frequencies in that 200 to 400-ish megahertz and some in the 900 megahertz band that allow you to do things like open all the garages or open all of the cars or open all of the Teslas. You've probably seen these types of things on your social media feeds, TikTok, or otherwise kids driving down the street with their little flipper on a skateboard and they're just opening all the Tesla charging ports. It's cute, it's fun, it's interesting. It's not really a gigantic security risk, but it's out there and it shows the potential and capability. We have successfully cloned, or cloned is the wrong term. We have successfully recorded and replayed keyed garage openers and car unlock capability, but we found that that's kind of tough to do in the sub-gigahertz range. You got to record that out of range and then replay it because the key rotates all the time. So know that most of you that are running a modern vehicle don't have a serious problem here, but if you can understand the keys, which have been leaked out there on the internet for many cars and many types, you can actually unlock cars by just clicking a button. These days with this thing. Sub-gigahertz fun. Okay, last couple of things. We talked about U2F authentication, I mentioned it, and all kinds of games and other things. The last thing that I wanted to kind of talk about here is just my recommendation. If you want to explore further than just I pulled it out of the box and turned it on once, go download and install the Unleashed firmware, unless it sounds like you can go social engineer a copy of Iceman's firmware from him. I don't know if he's going to let that out, but I'd love a copy. It sounds cool. It sounds cool, and it's something. It's going to take me from my basic to intermediate to advanced, probably, right? It's just going to infuse the Iceman knowledge about this. So, in pure fashion, that's what I've learned about the FlipperZero so far. I've now imparted that knowledge on you, and the reason why I do presentations like this is I'm not the FlipperZero expert. I'm just a guy who grabbed one, started playing around with it, and wanted to learn it and play it, and then I feel my role, it's not a role so much as I love to share these kinds of things, to inspire you to maybe, hey, I didn't know it could do that. I need to go check that out too. How many of you at least have that inkling now? Like, okay, so to the Flipper people, you're welcome for like 200 people going to go buy one of these this afternoon. It's not a promoted thing or anything else. Or play the badge game really hard because there's quite a few of them we're giving away. So that is the presentation as I have it. 15 minutes beforehand, or before that we were supposed to be done, I think. But I like getting you out early as well. There's more to explore downstairs. But I will open it for questions. Oh, I forgot about this. My wife, Vanna White over here, will be happy to pass along to you before you leave, those of you that are leaving, the unique Flipper mini badge that's only available during this talk. So she'll stand at the back as you exit.
Iceman will sign your Flipper.
And Iceman will sign your Flipper. You might get him to sign one of your Proxmarks, too. I think that'd be a little bit cooler. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming to listen to me ramble about a Flipper. And go buy one and play.